Good evening and welcome. It's Pens Down. This evening, I have a very important personality with me to share his story as far as his journey in journalism and communications in general is concerned. His face is up, but I'll give his name and other details in a bit. We are going to have, I'm sure, a very interesting discussion. Good evening and welcome. It's Hands Down. We are going to have a very interesting discussion with him. And I believe that for those who will be following us, you will get to understand the story behind the adventures of this rather interesting personality we have today. He's just a moment. He is the Chief Executive Officer and Expedition Leader of Brave Hearts Expeditions Limited. He is a Yali Fellow, a trained journalist, and holds a master's degree in international business. He is currently a PhD candidate in business management and the author of the book titled Executive Hallucination. We'll find out what that means for a title of a book. Before setting up Brave Hearts Expeditions, he worked as a public relations officer at King's University College in Accra and briefly as junior communications advisor to the African Cashew Initiative of the GIZ owned by the Germans. He holds the rank of Expedition Adventure Master Guide in the Ghana Outdoors Association and in the International Mountaineering and Climbing Federation. He has worked as a naturalist, outdoor educator, mountain guide, and adventure sports instructor since 1999. Wow. His expedition leadership experience exceeds 1,500 individual adventure expedition operations and programs in the jungle, mountains, ice, coastal, lacustrine, desert, and alpine terrains across 4 continents, including 16 successful assaults of Mount Kilimanjaro. This is interesting. Through his adventure leadership, Brave Hearts Expedition has become the first indigenous company to introduce commercial abseiling and kayaking into Ghana's adventure tourism sector. He is married to Nana Ajua Dakwa Daku, a leading female outdoor adventure guide in West Africa, and they have one beautiful daughter. And for some of us, we are hopeful that many more of those daughters plus sons are going to come. This evening, my guest is Jayjay D Segbefia, my brother. You are welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Stephen, and it's always a pleasure to connect with you.
Wonderful. We are going to start, looking at your profile, you are talking 1999, but I knew you came for journalism training years later. So for the focus of this, we are going to have to start from why you chose to come to Ghana Institute of Journalism to be trained as a journalist.
So I have always admired the mind of a journalist, that probing mind where you try to enter into the realm of things in order to fish out what information may be hidden or what information may be relevant, so you could share that knowledge with other people. And so I have always been drawn by the mind of a journalist. In fact, I'm drawn by the mind of a journalist more than I'm drawn by the mind of a lawyer, because a journalist seeks to bring out, flesh out what sometimes may be hidden or sometimes maybe, you know, apparent, but with a lot more hidden than meets the eye. And so my interest in journalism was because I wanted to understand how a journalist's mind works and to see whether or not I have what it takes to assume that kind of mindset.
Okay. Within which years did you train at Ghana Institute of Journalism?
So I think it was between 2004 and 2009.
2004 to 2000. That means you did a degree program, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So where did your journalism practice begin from?
Please say again, where did my journalism practice?
Where did your journalism practice begin from? Where did it start from?
Right on Jayjay campus, actually, because you know, the course is both a theoretical course and a practical course.
Yes.
And so, and on campus in particular, there was great opportunity provided by faculty for every journalism student and even PR student to practice their art. There were internship opportunities with the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, where I did my internship with Radio Ghana, and then of course with television as well. Even on campus, we had opportunity to work by setting up some kind of a press called a communicator, and we worked with an audiovisual TV unit on campus as well. So the training I had on campus was really practical. You did the theory in the class, and then you run off outside with a camera or a pen and a notepad to practice the very lessons that you had learned in class. And so for me, that was quite exciting. Plus the connection between the school and industry in terms of internships and all the practical attachments that students could do.
Now, your profile talks about you having been in the jungles or having been part of adventure since 1999. Now, that meant that at your back, while in journalism school, was a certain first love that you had.
Yes.
How did you do the balancing act? For instance, you had to go do journalism on the field, but this adventure or this jungle expedition would also come calling, or it is that time of the year when a certain activity which you so cherish is here. How did you do the balancing act? Did anything like that come up in the first place?
So my brush with the jungle was actually a hobby.
Okay.
I loved running expeditions across the world.
Okay.
And I think whilst I was running from one jungle to another, my kid sister, who had finished senior high school, was going to go to the university and seemed to have asked my dad, so what is Jayjay doing? And then I think the answer was that he's just running around in the bush somewhere, apparently uselessly. Yeah. So then, this was my passion, this was my job, but if you didn't want to look like a college dropout, then I thought, okay, let's go to school and figure out what to do with the degree afterwards. And so I applied to the Ghana Institute of Journalism, and I got admitted into the school. And while there, this is really, it was a hobby. I didn't really think at the time that I was going to turn it into a business per se. But every time when we were in school, I was persuaded more and more while I was in school that this is not what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to go back into the jungle. So you can think of it as I took a break to come and study and get a degree so I could go back into the jungle and do what I love doing best.
That means, in reality, you studied to satisfy those who were making noise in the background so that you could have the peace of mind to concentrate on what you loved. In
the beginning, yes. But I fell in love with the practice and the arts. I fell in love with journalism and I actually excelled at it, which would have been difficult if there wasn't a certain passion involved in the course. And so during the period of training, at some point I believed that I was going to come up probably as a journalist and still have my jungle expeditions on the side. But sometime during school, I was persuaded that I did not want to end up becoming a journalist. At least not on a full-time basis. And the reasons were many. One of them was the fact that a lot of Ghanaian journalism is fed by the political class. So it's what governments and political systems do that predominantly makes the news, which is why state broadcasters still have the kind of clout had over the years. And even private, media houses still have the clout because they can create, they can paint sensationalism upon what government does. And I have never been quite, interested in generally politics and what government does. And most of what government does is really pretty boring unless you're considering corruption. And so when I looked at it, and then the third thing was the sorry state of most of the journalists I knew. And looking at their lives, I'm like, no, I don't want to end up like you. And so then I figured, look, maybe I wanted the mind of a journalist, but I could apply it better in another direction. And then that was what actually aided in my decision making not to practice.
I see. So in all, if you put it together in years, about how many years of your life did you actively maybe write or report or do things connected to journalism?
Probably
I know
5 years.
you still do, because that your African Jungle King blog is one of the most explosive platforms where anytime you get angry about an issue, you want to vent your
Yes, you're right. I mean, so, once you've gone through 4 to 5 years of journalism training and practice, essentially you are a journalist.
Yeah.
I mean, I have wondered sometimes whether the Ghana Journalism Association isn't going to have something like the Ghana Bar Association does, where you have some kind of a license that identifies you as a journalist. And of course, maybe this is even important, especially in the face of the political systems now hijacking journalism, political parties putting up radio stations to set political agenda. So clearly, journalism now falls short of the mark. But in my mind, I was thinking that once you go through that training, it becomes a part and parcel of you. If you go into business, you will edit a website. If you're social media savvy, you're going to have to edit a lot of prose and text for your business and all of that. So really, it's a part of you, it's a part of your life, and you can't run away from. Every time something happens, you think about applying those principles towards that particular thing that you are looking at. And so that's for me what it is. So whilst I did not afterwards actively practice, I still found ways of writing out what I thought. And I remember sometimes, usually when I write anything, I say what is on my mind. Then I go and scour a lot of media houses and look for a lot of research materials to see whether my anger has a certain basis. There are many times when after I have scribbled something, I look at it and I realize, no, you don't actually have a basis.
You're a lone ranger. You're on your own.
Exactly.
Yes.
You're really on your own. And then there are some things that I have penned down, and I know that they are very, very brutal right now. So I give myself a week or two to see whether if I read back on what I have written, I'll still feel that I need to push it forward. And then I'd empower it up and then let the chips fall where they may.
Wow. Some say you are controversial, especially in the way you write, the way you carry your ideas. Raw, uncensored, no holds barred. It's like nobody respecting. Once it is the issue you want to tackle, all guns blazing. Have you heard people tell you that to your face, that you are controversial?
So they haven't said I'm controversial, but they wish, like they would ask you, was this the best way you could have said this? And during my journalism practice, this was some of the issues I had with my editors, where I come and I report something the way I see it with all the, what I like to say, the venom that thing replied. And then it will get watered down through the editorial policy and then come out looking like something that I wasn't even sure I wrote. So then I'm like, why did you have to do
your
this?
byline is with it.
Exactly. And I'm like, why has this been watered down? Like, you might as well have just said this was an in-house report rather than put my name, because that's not what I wrote. And then they're like, young man, as you grow, you will discover that what you feel and what you write are usually not the same thing. And so I had to learn through journalism training that, it's not so much my opinion about the news that mattered, except that somehow they wanted you to know that the news itself was neutral, which is really a whole lot of nonsense, to be honest.
Yeah,
because
yes, but
there's no such thing as neutral news.
Yeah. Exactly, but even till today, I can say for a fact that the passion that flows with which you look at an issue dictates to a very large extent how you capture it if you want to write about it. So for you, nothing really has changed.
No, not much has changed, because for me, I see what I see, and my feelings about what I am seeing are uncensored. Then I find the best ways I can to express exactly how I feel about what's happening. And once I feel that way, so really, because, feelings are universal. Everybody feels one way or the other about something that's going on. Except that the journalist in me is able to put those feelings into words and paint a picture that gets you to feel exactly what I am feeling, and for you to also develop a feeling in reaction to the feeling I have conveyed. So that if I say something and you believe, for example, that that statement is political and seems to go against a certain political persuasion, anybody that supports that persuasion is likely to feel that that bullet was meant for them. Whereas the person on the opposite side feels like I could not have said it better, or I could have even sharpened it some more. But I guess that's really the beauty of, journalistic tendencies. The fact that you say what you need to say, and you leave people to form their own opinions and feelings about what you have said. But the most important thing is to leave no doubt about what exactly it was that you were saying.
Okay. Between journalism practice and its teaching, if you have a choice, what will you settle for?
I think practice, because practice is key. Because, a journalist isn't, well, they like to tell us that a journalist, or you're a journalist by what you do. But I like to believe that you become a journalist by what you are.
Yeah, and it's a lifestyle, actually.
Exactly, that's what it is. And once you understand that, it becomes a part of you. And then you then decide whether or not those skills are going to be used for a good purpose or for a bad purpose. Yeah, and I guess that is really what it is. A lot of governments recognizing that power from if you read history of the press in Ghana, have understood this power and have tried to direct that power towards their goals. For example, Kwame Nkrumah believed that journalism and the press should go towards supporting state ideals and values. Okay, and in his case, where a lot of those values ended up becoming oppressive and all that, he expected that kind of support. So when a Ghanaian editor once wrote, when Kwame Nkrumah's name picture appeared on one of our currencies, he had asked that Nkrumah, what is next? You understand? And of course, he got into trouble because the powers that were at that time felt that journalism's role was not to criticize the government that was there, but to support it towards a certain goal. And so clearly, this is how we've been shaped into believing that you're a journalist by what you do and not necessarily by who you are. But what do you think PAVA answer would have felt about some of these things? He really felt that, no, forget it. Yes, get the news, but the news should lead to the forming of opinion. And your opinion must shape exactly what it is that you feel based on, obviously, a bigger set of, it could be morals, it could be values, it could be principles. And for me, I think that the practice aspect is even more important, because that is what makes the journalist.
Okay. I had a conversation with one of our colleagues, Samuel Usuefri, and he is so fully persuaded that as far as he's concerned, journalism is not a profession in Ghana. What's your take?
I agree with him, because, well, we've been called the fourth estate for a long time, which means then that those who coined that term believe that we are a part of government, okay, or we are part of the society in a setting, with some kind of umbilical attachment to whatever may exist within that society. And in Ghana in particular, it is so, because 60% of our people are illiterate. That's number one. And once you have this much illiteracy within a country, then the challenge you're going to have is that journalism, especially independent journalism, will not be appreciated. And so now you bring that in, then the situation you have is everyone now feels that journalists should then only be an appendix of everything else that's going on. As soon as
like
journalism,
a conveyor belt or something.
Exactly, which is why, and notice this, it looks like everyone in Ghana can beat up journalists and no one cares.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
Even political
police officers
foot
in
soldiers
front of the police headquarters.
Yes, can beat up journalists because you are supposed to be an extension of the state. So if the state decides to quell some demonstration going on, the journalist is supposed to paint a picture that those people deserve the beating they are getting. If that journalist does not paint that correct picture, then that journalist too must be beaten because that journalist was on the side of the demonstrators. You understand? And so this is why obviously that system, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary themselves have gotten involved in the business of journalism by setting up and funding radio, TV stations, and press houses because they wanted to serve that particular agenda. Now we all know that there are newspapers and then there are radio stations that pander to either the right or the left. If in Ghana we have the right or left, or whatever confused kind of political ideological system we practice within the country. So really, I agree with Sam when he says, and he was the president before me at Jayjay. And he's absolutely right. What we are practicing in Ghana is news peddling, which is no different than the supermarket where there are pom-pom store systems that we have in place. Coconuts are in vogue today. So you grab a lot of coconuts and then you sell. When they go and the coffee brokerman comes in play, you buy some and you sell. So that's effectively what it is. And you look through all the media, all headlines at every point are similar. Yeah, so we're just doing news peddling, but we aren't really doing journalism, unfortunately.
Well, political ownership of media houses and media outfits, what does it portend for our democracy as a people or as a country?
It makes a mockery of the expression independent press. If that press is funded by the system that's usually is the perpetrator of the corruption, human rights abuses, and all the kinds of ills that journalism is supposed to expose. And this is just how it works. So once they get involved, then that's exactly what it becomes. That people now, what you think is independent journalism is actually paid for journalism. You understand? And because it's paid for by the system that created it, there's no real adherence to the principles, fairness of making sure that it's accurate. All the tenets that we understand in journalism are thrown to the dogs, and it becomes just a matter of promoting a certain ideology, promoting a certain agenda to the exclusion of all else. Okay, and that also affects facts. It affects figures, and then what at the end of the day you might get is that there's no objectivity. And then what that happens is that then you get the public to take sides. So there are people in this country who would never tune in to a particular radio station because they know that radio station belongs to one ideology. And then there are others who would never tune into the other one because they know that it belongs to it. So everyone that's trying to find a fair and balanced system is also going to face the same thing because the so-called fair and balanced system have both of these same people in there trying to still push the same agenda. Which is why sometimes you get commentators locking horns with the moderator of a radio station. And that can happen because obviously everybody feels that this is how we should push the conversation. And if the moderator does not budge, then it creates a problem, especially budging in favor of the one that's, trying to feel more aggrieved.
Let's now get into your adventure and expeditions that you've been involved in since 1999. What was the reaction from friends and classmates, let's say back at Jayjay, Institute of Journalism, when they got to know you were involved in something like? Were there negative comments? Were there encouragements?
So first, I think it took everyone by surprise because in my 4 years on campus, it had never shown in any way that I was quote unquote jungle boy or that I ran expeditions or adventures. I think it was in my final year as president of the Jayjay SRC that I think when students paid their fees and the SRC dues came and we were doing the usual Aquaba week, My organizing secretary at the time came up with a proposal, which was typical beach parties, bikini, those kinds of things. And I've always believed that as a leader, my principles and my values should shine through. So I told them I was not going to fund a party that was going to have alcohol and all kinds of, no, I wasn't going to do that. And that if we're going to do anything, let's do an expedition. So for the very first time in the history of the school, week happened in the Embry Mountains. We dragged everybody through the bush. Even today, people remember that experience. You know, like why were we being punished when we're supposed to be celebrating the arrival of new students? Yeah. So this was the closest anyone came to realizing that I really wasn't a city person, and that behind the academic leadership persona, there was this person that apparently preferred to live in the bush. And that was the first flash. Then I think after that, of course, every student went their separate ways after graduation. And then the next people began to see, mostly on social media, we were running these adventure expeditions, and people were trying to draw the link. I remember meeting Uswajiman Lot, who was the Chief Justice of the school when I was president. And he was telling another person that, can you believe this guy? He has a first-class degree in journalism, and he's in the bush. So then that was the first time I actually got the idea that, okay, people were trying to figure out, so this guy that apparently was brilliant in school, what's he doing in the jungle? Like, where is the link? Why did you come and waste everybody's time in school, making us all believe you're either going to enter into journalism or enter into politics and swerve all of us in this kind of regard? So it's really been watching, trying to understand anything they know about me in the past to link with what we seem to be doing, and obviously failing at it because they didn't know that even before I came, this really was something that was going on with me.
I see. How did you start all these, your jungle expeditions and love for nature in the bush? You call it the outdoors, right? Or is it the indoors, which is
the outdoors? Yeah.
I mean, how did all this begin? How did it start?
So in some of the best senior high schools in Ghana, and obviously the Accra Academy tops it. I know you would disagree, but like they say, you can argue with your school logo. But Accra Academy had the Duke of Edinburgh International Award Program. And what you would do is you do community service. So you find a community and go and serve that community. So typically we would volunteer at the Kaneshi Polyclinic, do a lot of cleanup campaigns, buy materials for the inmates in the wards, all these kinds of things. So we were taught by the program to get hands-on engaged with the community, especially those that were vulnerable. And then we would do some environmental work as well, and then engage in an expedition, all towards the award of a bronze, silver, or gold medal from the Duke of Edinburgh. And so internationally, the program is called the Duke of Edinburgh International Award. And in Ghana, we call it the Head of State Award Scheme. So at that time, in about 1999, it was Accra Academy, Brig Girls. Well, needless to say, none of the schools that have made it to the NSMQ were on that list. Yeah, but then this is really...
This short.
So this is what it was. So I got introduced to it and I loved it. Yeah, then after school, I signed up for some programs and courses. And in my travels, that's when I discovered that every school that was popular had an outdoor adventure program. You just name it. In the United States, from Dartmouth College to Harvard to Yale, all the big names. If you're going to do any kind of business education in a world-renowned school, even before you first learn about the theories of the course you're doing, you are taking outdoor to ski, to do some rock climbing, to do some activities, because these things were important to anchor the learning from the classroom. So I then began to wonder why we as a country were not involved in these kinds of things. And you and I know we have some of the most beautiful outdoors this world has ever seen. So then I thought that maybe one day if I got rich, I'd set up a company to run these kinds of adventures and give people the opportunity to meet with nature and then ultimately with nature's God. But we never got rich, but then we found ways to still run the program and allow anyone that wanted to still have that experience. And we've been running this as a business since 2010. And so, we're still here. So,
Your wife is also into adventures and jungle expeditions. And how did you lure her into this? Was it before you married her or after?
I think probably. So here's what I used to do. Let's say if I found someone I liked, I'd propose.
Okay.
And then, Ghanaian women, oh, I'll think about it, left, right, and center. Yeah. And while they were thinking about it, I was off into the jungle. Then 3 months later, I resurface, and then I come, and they're like, "Hey, so about my proposal, what's up?" Then they're like, "Well, you left, so I mean, what do you expect?" Yeah, and so this was really the kind of life I was kind of living in.
Oh,
I was
okay.
never quite around, and this was kind of my passion. Yeah, and it was easier because that helped me do the selection process. So every time I was away and I wasn't calling or texting, typically the women will get offended, and by the time you come, they then
You've been
say,
written
"Well,
off.
yeah, you've been written off,"
Okay.
So, and of course, a lot of them also felt that it was also my way of getting rid of them, because every time I wanted to probably run away from a relationship, I just had to go into the jungle and then come back 3 months later, and then I was a free man.
Communist
So this, but she decided to pursue me into the jungle to find out what it was in there that was keeping me away from being accessible.
So,
and then
okay,
when
so
she came,
her curiosity led to her also discovering what the jungle also has to offer.
Exactly. Yes. She herself, and she excelled at it. She was one of the women who really, really became very natural in the outdoors. And once my excuse duty had been shredded, I no longer had a reason to not be accountable. And
that's
so
right.
one thing led to another, and then here we are.
Oh, wow. And interestingly, two of you are Jayjay products.
Because that's where we met.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay. Oh, okay. I see. Now let's look at, so you said you have assaulted Mount Kilimanjaro how many times?
60
what is
times.
The meaning of that English? What's the meaning of that English? For the first time, I don't understand your English. So help us.
So when you climb a very high mountain, or you climb one of the world's 7 highest peaks, we usually call them an assault.
Okay.
Because the mountain is there, it doesn't care about you. You are the one that's coming in with your boots and your gear and equipment to try and get to the summit. Usually the mountain will stop you in one way or the other. Either hypothermia will stop you, altitude sickness, something will definitely stop you. So if you're trying not to stop, then it means you are bulldozing your way through it, you're assaulting it. So that's really where the language is coming from. So when we are
in simple English, what you are telling me is that for 16 times you have moved from the base of the mountain to the very top.
To the very top, to Huru Peak. Yes, that's correct. Successfully. Yeah.
And that has happened 16 times.
So it's happened 18 times, but we were successful 16 times.
Wow.
Because sometimes you may not be
quite
successful.
A different kind of species. I mean, how did you do it?
So I think, so for me, it was predominantly a business. So I was running the business of taking people into, it's a bit like Ghana's Afajatu. My business takes people into Afajatu. So I may have done that maybe 100, 200, 500 times. I've lost count, because it was my job to lead people up into the Togolese highlands through Afajatu. So then in that case, when a person is counting the number of times they've done it, it's not so much, because it's like your job. Yeah. But Kilimanjaro, because it's not in Ghana, then requires me to organize from here, pick up my customers in Tanzania, and then begin the process of trying to get to the peak. And because it's a big mountain, we call it an assault, because you can say you have assaulted a Fajatu, but it doesn't deserve the name because it's quite a small mountain. But if you do a bigger mountain that is more than 2,000 to 5,000 meters, then you really are a mountaineer, because you're dealing with things that are higher than you, and things that could literally kill you. And so that's really what fits into the difference in nomenclature.
You must be on some really carefully planned or selected diet then.
No, I'm eating everything you
Ghanaian eats.
Yes, I eat everything. Well, I don't eat fufu because I don't like people playing with my food. But other than that, other than that, I eat everything that we eat. Only that because we are constantly in the outdoors, we are constantly physical.
Okay.
Even here, tomorrow I have clients coming over. We'll go up a mountain that's 750 feet high for just about half an hour, get onto river water and do some kayaking. So our life is really quite physical. And so whatever mountain you are taking, because you know this is what you live, you just prepare for it. So you carry enough to help you survive the journey. You're taking your water. It's just planning how to survive it and taking your time because the mountain is eternal. It's not trying to fight with you. You are the one trying to push your physical and mental power against it. So if you're doing so, then you need to do so with respect, which means you should take your time with what steps you take. You should expend, you should balance your energy expenditure with energy intake. So if you are sweating a lot, you need to drink more water. Okay. You have to take high energy foods so that you can have the power of the fuel to be able to move your body towards the peak that you are aiming at. And you also need to be prepared. Make sure that if something goes wrong, you've got a team or a series of procedures to take care of you when that happens. So it's just, thinking about this in a scientific way and then making sure that you take people up there and bring them back in one whole piece so that the experience stays with them when they leave.
Wow. Let's get back to journalism again. The profession, a lot of trained professionals are leaving the crafts, unfortunately. So many. In fact, the most empirical evidence you can have when you go to Jayjay at their top-up class for diploma holders to do degree, you will see that the PR class, the public relations class, is always overflowing. Yes. But the journalism class, sometimes some 30 for the whole year. In fact, this year's admission list that I checked on Jayjay's Facebook page, the journalism class is not up to 40. But for the PR class, the numbers are there. You have classmates, you have colleagues, you know people within the fraternity. What would be accounting for this state of affairs?
I think when I think about my classmates, even the hardwired journalists among us are into business and into PR. So sometimes my conclusion is that actually journalists make better public relations practitioners than public relations practitioners from the schools make better journalists. And so it's first off, like most crafts in Ghana, it's all economic. Okay, people are trying to make ends meet. And so you're trying to find the tools that enables those ends to meet. And when you are a practicing journalist, you aren't making those ends meet because the media space is not the richest space. I don't know, I don't know what kind of taxes our media people file, but if you're trying to find some of the most sustainable media houses, you would even find out that it isn't actually journalists that set up those media houses. It's actually business people who set up those media houses. So let's understand then that journalism is really a business. Okay. But proper journalism would have been a business of selling the news. Okay. So the New York Times, the Guardian, the Economist, the information these people provide is the commodity they are trading. And so the high quality of the news item they provide is what makes me, for example, subscribe to the New York Times and pay about 15 CDs, 20 CDs every month, sometimes 40 CDs a month, because I know the quality of the news I'm getting. And on that app, nobody's running an ad for me because the news is the commodity, it's the business. So if journalism then is the news, so if what you're selling is the news, then the news must be of the quality that can attract a buyer. So that the buyer first buys the news, then after they have bought the news, advertisers who are trying to access that buyer whose interest is in the news then feel compelled to pay you so that the buyer then assumes that by seeing that advert, they're also seeing some news that is worth their while and may take a certain action based on those kinds of information. So effectively, this is what it is. But the bulk of Ghanaian journalism isn't that kind of a business. And because it isn't that kind of a business that has a business plan and figures out some access to funding and there figures out some long-term relationship, you can then understand why at the end of the day, a lot of people are leaving because it does not make business sense to stay in it. Yeah. And once it doesn't make business sense, or it doesn't, it's not lucrative, you got to find somewhere else that will be lucrative. But since you can't take the journalism out of the journalist, then what you get is that they've got to find other areas where they could still practice those tenets, but can get properly paid for it. Yeah. And finding this balance is extremely complicated. So people see journalists because they make a name, they're popular, and those kinds of things. And they don't understand that that popularity has no correspondence with their pockets.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, and without that correlation, it's really fame that really doesn't bring anyone any good.
But I've been wondering, why is it that all these years no media house or no journalist has raised the critical issue of conditions of service of journalists? Is that a hated topic? Is that a dreaded topic? Is that some sort of a terrain where angels fear to tread, or what exactly is it?
I think it's a rank pulling profession as well. Okay, it's really, we pull ranks a lot. There's a sub editor, there's a chief editor, there's a main editor who all answer to the business owner. And that's so, right. I mean, how many times have we not heard in this country where journalists, reporters, and presenters have been moved around or taken off the air simply on the whim of the owner or a financier of one media house or the other. So clearly, it's really about funding, and the space does not call for it. And now that we've got new media disrupting the old media, it becomes even more complicated because I was looking at how much I have given Facebook in terms of Facebook ads for this year, and compared to how much I may have given to a newspaper or a television station in Ghana. I have given 0 Ghana cedis to a newspaper or radio station in Ghana this year. But I may have given a lot of money to Facebook, Twitter, and Google this year. Right. Okay, and that's because they disrupted. Facebook only charges me $1 minimum to run an advert a day. Okay, I won't have that same privilege with any media house in Ghana. But at the end of the day, at the end of the year, you may find out that I may have spent about $30,000, for example, on Facebook ad for the full year. Now this 3.6, so this 180,000 cedis could still have gotten me some ads in a Ghanaian radio station or a newspaper. But the thing is that cumulatively, the Ghanaian system will not have allowed me to do so at $1 a day. You understand? Whereas Facebook lets me do it at $1 a day. Okay, so at the end of the day, what Facebook has done is to find out ways by which to make it cheaper and then still give you the results you need. But our traditional systems are still expensive, and they can't even guarantee the results that you need. And so really, there's a lot that has changed within the media space from the disruptive new media. But even if you're inclined to focus even on those traditional media, it doesn't quite pay, because really, if you're looking at rent, if you're looking at electricity, water, salaries, if you look at how much, and you have 20 employees, graduate journalists, how much you're going to pay them may be more than how much you will make from adverts in a year. And once it becomes hard, then it means that the journalist is the one who suffers. You understand? And so it's not lucrative. There are a lot of media houses. I mean, I think I was one of the people who, and this is just by example, when I saw a very, very, very good radio station try and switch to television, I actually laughed, because I was thinking that why would anybody watch a television if the person was not unemployed or a housewife? No one watches television. You get your news from the new and disruptive media. You understand? Right. And the person that's watching the TV, the housewife or the unemployed person, isn't going to contribute anything to that media house in viewership. That makes sense. And a lot of businesses, if I'm going to place an ad in any place, it's really about conversion. Okay, I'm not interested anymore in who watches the ad. I'm interested in who watches my ad and takes an action on that ad. You understand? Because the reason why I'm doing that ad is so that I can maximize my sales. So if the person watches it and cannot come and purchase my item, then I'm not interested in that person. So this is really what it is. So predominantly, journalism is business. And like with most businesses, there is a bottom line. In practical journalism, the news itself would have been the business you're selling. And because you are doing that, subscribers would have brought in a lot of revenues. But since subscribers are not doing that, force them to fall on advertisers. And since advertisers are no longer advertising to traditional media, therein goes, I'm just hearing then comes the trouble of the journalist, being able to make ends meet whilst maintaining the quality. And once you can put these together, it creates a problem.
And one challenge new media has also brought, which is social media has also brought, is that it has launched the journalism careers of millions untrained across the world. Citizen journalists today, a good number of them are bloggers all over the place. Now, one thing I have realized is that I am yet to see a prominent blogger that has training in journalism in Ghana. I don't know if you have any name in mind. Any prominent blogger in Ghana who is a trained journalist?
Well, there's a few of them.
Okay.
I won't mention their names because I have credibility issues with a lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you see, once you enter into that space, sometimes you are forced to sacrifice your how do you call it? The journalistic
ethics.
Yes, the ethics of the journalism profession for conversion.
That's right.
Okay. And this one I will say, for example, I was excited when the daily graphic came online. I was very, very excited, and social media and everything else. Now you go to the graphic portal, because that's the national daily. You go to the graphic portal and go to any world-class news portal as well.
Yeah.
It looks like we have taken the AdSense thing online to ridiculous proportions. Honestly, what you will have is
sometimes you are reading every line.
Every single line. And the space is so cluttered that they forget that, look, I came here for news. And, maybe, again, I mentioned the literacy level a few minutes ago. Let me talk about the online literacy levels as well. Yeah. You may get a lot of uninitiated people with phones clicking on anything that pops up on their screens.
Sure. So
for me, who will not do that unless that advert is relevant to me, I am looking for the news and I'm having a hard time finding the news, which for me is the commodity I'm happy to pay for.
Yeah.
But because they also have to deal with people who are not happy to pay for that commodity, and so then bombard them with every available ad you can get, that puts me off. You understand? And so this is really what becomes. And now, how do you then drive traffic to this? Then you've got to come up with sensational headlines and come up with a lot of things that will excite the uninitiated reader. And even for the so-called initiator, anybody that's easily distracted. And so you've got all of those things streaming up. And there's a lot of them that actually have more readership and viewership than even the national dailies online.
And recently I've had some sort of shock from some of the well-established media houses. A good number of them have lifted stories that I read from the pages of bloggers, no editing, nothing, and they published it on their site. If somebody had told me, I wouldn't believe, but I was a witness to that.
Yes, it's clickbaiting. Because then for that particular day, you're going to have a lot. And the online ads also pay. So you can figure out how much Google pays them for the number of clicks, so on and so forth. So maybe when they realize the books aren't looking good for a particular day, then they share these things. And if you hold them accountable, they would usually tell you, we copied from this person, so and so. And so then he's the one that you obviously will ultimately hold accountable because they're just sharing and citing the source of their story. So this is really what it is. And when people share those stories on some WhatsApp platforms, I get disappointed because I'm like, no, that's not a credible site. This is not a credible site. Why would you make noise about something from this blog that's just not credible? I can tell those ones that are and are not, and I usually block them online. Yeah, but most people do not do that because they are not initiated and they do not read anyway whether or not the story is true. Now that we've started suing people, even for their Facebook posts and winning, hopefully it might inject some sanity into that kind of space. Yeah, that kind of space. But it makes some things also difficult. So even for businesses, you like to advertise to a certain group of people, but you're going to be Facebook algorithms believe that anybody that clicks it makes that thing exciting, but that thing could just be nothing that makes sense. And so it makes that kind of algorithm also very unpopular, because you have a lot of people interacting with your news article who may not really be interested in it. But since it is not news that they are selling, then of course it goes off. So then if you're looking, but remember that because it's ultimately a business, high quality journalism will suffer. Okay. Unless you are looking for people who will then say,
I was going to come to that is journalism in trouble as a profession in Ghana, looking at all that is happening? What was the future like?
Well, it is in trouble because I haven't, in this year in particular, I haven't quite, I've lived without the news for about 2 years now. So,
wow.
Yeah, I have it. And for the past 2 years, my life has not been adversely impacted at all from the lack of news. If anything at all, my life has taken a turn for the better after shutting out all news to do with from radio and TV. Yeah, there was only one incident where I could say I suffered for lack of the news. And this happened, I think recently, the National Road Safety Commission was running a campaign to remove unauthorized lighting from all vehicles. And because I live in the jungle and sometimes there's absolutely no lights where I work, I have these extra lights that are at the base of my car, but they're not even on the top of the car. They are right at the bottom. So that in a place where it's, you've got a lot of fog and thickness, I can still see through my way through the jungle. So I didn't know this. So I was getting back into Accra. I got stopped at Afienya, and the police officer then said, "Hey, this is illegal and what's it and whatnot." They have been talking about it for 2 months. And I said, "Well, officer, one, I was not aware. Number two, this is a bush car. And so I work in the jungle, so I need this light." But thankfully, it only comes on when I turn it on in the night, because in the night, I don't have to turn on that light. I only have to turn it on when I'm using it where I need to use it. But of course, he didn't. So we had a bit of a banter until eventually, I was let go. Yeah. And so this was the only time when I really didn't know what was happening in the news. And then when I came, but then again, that law enforcement officer then let me know that this is what's happened. So I realized that living without a news for 2 years hasn't hurt me in any way. If anything at all, I've had a peace of mind. I haven't gotten angry and written a blog because I heard something on the news that got me mad, and I decided to let my voice be heard about it. So I realized that I can actually live without what we call news. But I don't think I can do that even with the international news that doesn't affect me directly, like the New York Times. Okay, it's like when I wake up in the morning, that's what I'm reading, because I get to know what's happening in the world. You understand? In an in-depth, high-quality way than I would if I was trying to find it from here.
Especially on the U.S. issues in Afghanistan, you read some of their pieces and you see this one is objectively balanced.
Goodness. I mean, yes, it's detailed.
Exactly. They take their time to walk you through the incidents in such a way that by the time you are done, you have a complete picture of what they were trying to paint.
And it's relevant. It's important. But you read Ghanaian news and you wonder, okay, so that's it. The worst part for me is court reporting. When you read court reporting and then you're like, okay, so how, like this, I'm probably, my life would be better if I didn't even read this news, because you realize that what's being reported. And that's what's happening now. The judiciary, obviously also get this about this, are also trying to get journalists to report based on a certain judicial standard, which in itself a problem. But then that's obviously because if the quality is bad, then you get the people you should be holding accountable now holding you accountable for the quality of your content. And this is really, what lets you know that we are really running into troubles. And that's why the best and the brightest among journalists always veer. That's some of the best names we have. We're running very good, pieces on radio and TV. And now they are corporate communication directors of corporations. You understand? Right. And that's what lets you know that, no, this is really what the issue was. We all get there and hoping for better so we can switch into business where the real money is, and sometimes where you get the quality you need.
You are a PhD candidate. When people attempt PhDs and they start PhDs, we begin to see academia as the next stop. Are we going to see an end to your romance with the jungle, or the PhD is just going to be another knowledge addition so that you can better explore the jungle, maybe from a more business-like angle?
So about 70% of our customers are businesses.
Okay.
And what we do is to use these outdoor tools to teach them about leadership and teamwork.
Okay.
And the CEOs and the managers of these businesses have master's degrees, and they've risen to the top, as it were, of their trade. So the question then has been, how do we help these people when they come for adventures so that they can understand the metaphorical significance between their experience on the river and what they are doing in business?
Okay.
So first and foremost, for us to be able to understand, I thought that, okay, if we could rise to the top of business, then we could really guide businesses using the tools of our outdoor trade to become better. You understand? So this is really first and foremost where this is coming from, so that we could develop curricula in the outdoors relevant to businesses. Then hopefully, like it happens in other parts of the world, the de facto HR development program will be an outdoor adventure rather than, say, a hotel escapade where they are just eating and drinking and trying to bond in an environment that doesn't quite enhance it the way the outdoors do. So that's the first and foremost thing, so that our people don't see us as tour guides, but rather as business facilitators, helping them get to where we want them to get to. Yeah. So this is the first. And then the second is, I won't be young forever. Maybe one day will come when I really can't go up the mountains anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. And then I will be probably then forced to only focus on the administrative business component of what we do. So that maybe when that day comes, we could have the skills so we could impart some knowledge within the academic space. But I think the overriding goal is to also enable universities to inculcate outdoor education and experiential learning into their curriculum. And for us to be able to do so, we must rise to the levels of that space. So when we come back and we suggest it, we can suggest it from that internal angle, so that they too can benefit. Yeah. Like Yale and all the other top-notch schools do. Yeah.
I see you in this uniform all the time. Is that the prescribed uniform for what you do? I mean, tell us about it. How did you come by this, and who prescribed it?
So this is the soldiers call this the OG, the olive green, and this is what soldiers used to wear back in the day until the camo came, and then they discarded these ones. So when we thought of our work in the jungle and everything else, we thought of what kind of uniform will help us blend in. Okay, and we figured that, I mean, if I'm in the forest, and you will not be able to spot me, in the forest at all. But because we also run international programs, we needed our country representation on our uniform. So we wrote to the Ministry of Interior and humbly requested, because this is the Ghanaian flag, and if you're going to use the Ghanaian flag on any, anything, it's the national colors of the country. So you need to have permission from the Ministry of Interior to so do. Even if it's a T-shirt with a Ghana flag, you require that permission. And so we wrote to them, spelling out what we wanted to do and everything. They gave us the guidelines and then permitted us. So if I stand up, for example, you see my company name on it as well. Okay, my rank is on the lapel, and then the flag is here, so that nobody mistakes you for security forces, soldiers, or anyone, and that you can easily be identified. Yeah, so this is really so they really did give us the guidelines. And once we got the approval, we've always, unfortunately, every time I post a picture of me on any platform, it's usually because I'm in the outdoors. Yeah, but I'm sure if I lived in the city, it would be on other places as well. Yeah.
What has been the most difficult, the most tasking adventure you've ever embarked on?
The Central African Republic. We ran an expedition in that area because it's a lot of plains. There's I think there's more death by lightning than there is by vehicles.
By
the Central
lightning?
African Republic. Yeah, by lightning, because it's flat.
Really?
It's flat out plains. And so
Whoa.
lightning will strike the tallest thing that is there around the time. So yeah, when you're having this kind of exploration, that's it. And it happens in the north too, because there aren't very, very tall trees. There are some places where if you were out during a rainstorm, then you stood the risk of getting struck. So the biggest challenges have come from obviously force majeure, like natural, the weather mostly, because that's really the thing that can mess you up. But everything else, we can usually think ahead, plan ahead, and prepare for those contingencies. But you cannot control the weather, and so that's really what gets to us.
Wow. Is there anything that can take you away from the outdoors? Anything?
Well, the Ghanaian economic system could have, because what we're trying to do really is an economic issue. And so when taxes rise and, all these things come and you're trying to access funding and you're not getting it, then you feel like, I've got 2 degrees, I've got 2 master's degrees, why don't I pick up and hustle within a political system like all my rich friends are doing? You understand? So if ever there was anything, this was it. But we've been doing this for 10 years at least. And we are confident that the picture we see of what success looks like is grander than anything else that will take away, us away from it. So I'm not quite sure. And we believe that the country needs this. When I look at the clients that we touch, the people we take through this program, how their lives change, we are quite optimistic that, hey, this is a good thing. And this doesn't take anything away from the environment. If I lead an expedition to a forest and we leave, and you follow after us, you will never see any evidence that we were there. So it doesn't take anything away from the environment. We have still the Adome Bridge. Yeah, it takes nothing away.
What about, you don't set fire with firewood and the rest?
No, because that would mean destroying the ecosystem in that area. So if we'll have to set fire, then it means we'll probably set the fire on a rock where nothing gets burnt or nothing gets destroyed. Yeah, we are quite... So if I go through a bush and you decide to follow me, you're going to have a hard time, because you may not even see my footprints because of how light we may step when we are going through that. So the key thing is to take nothing but photographs and leave nothing but footprints. Yeah, and so with this kind of thing, the environment, so obviously we won't spoil the rivers. We are not a galamsey activity. So everyone enjoys the natural environment. And then when you are done, you leave it as you came to meet it, so that the next generation or the next customer or the next person can also have that same kind of enjoyment. And so this is really how we look at it.
Has any of your clients suffered any? So have you suffered any casualties in the line of business? Maybe like a client. I'm not necessarily talking about a life being lost. I'm talking about injuries here and there, accidental falls, and all that. What have been some of the experiences?
So we've never had that, at least not beyond what the client themselves present with. So if a client has, for example, a ruptured appendix, but still came on the expedition and is in pain, then the person already brought that condition onto the expedition and probably wasn't honest with us and then presented it. Or if someone has malaria, they probably brought their malaria on the expedition. But in terms of the outdoors, we have a system in place to keep our customers safe. We do a risk assessment of all the places we go, so we know what the danger is. And we set up something we call a casualty evacuation program, so that in the unlikely event something goes bad, we have a very good system that gets you to the nearest medical center, or that gets you treated on the field as quickly as possible. And we've perfected this over the years, so that at every point when there's something happening or going on, our response time is key. And so far, even when we activate it, we make sure that everyone is safe and sound during this process. Usually accidents will occur when people get reckless. Okay, like when someone is under the influence, then they feel stronger than they actually are. So if there's a river, instead of wearing a life jacket, because they're under the influence, will jump into the river. We do not tolerate alcohol or drugs in any of our adventures, so that the customer has his full faculties in play when they are here. So with the vigilance from our side and his soberness, you avoid as many accidents as you possibly can. Then the only thing that you can prevent then becomes the weather. And even for that, once we look up and we see the weather changing, we adapt and switch accordingly.
How many young ones are you training to take after you? Because you said earlier on that it will come a day that your strength may not be able to contain the rigors of some of these exercises and activities.
So there are between 10 and 18 young people who can do various degrees of what I can do. Yeah, whether on the water, whether in the air doing abseiling, or on land doing mounting and navigation. Yeah, so there are people who can do this. And I'm sure that by the end of next year, most of them would have gotten their licenses. And then they too will become guides or master guides. And so, yeah, so, and of course, obviously, it's also good for our business continuity and sustainability, so that if something happens to me, there are others who can carry on as well. And so, yeah, it's part of the long-term success and prosperity of our business to ensure that there are others who can do so. And right now, I can count a minimum of 18 who can do exactly what I can do.
Did the heat of COVID-19 tell on your business?
It was rather the opposite. Everybody that could no longer fly to Dubai was looking to do something different during COVID-19 and found us. Then I think also what we did also was to adapt. We used to run expeditions where we would take people into one bus at the Accra Mall, go off into the jungle to a place they didn't know. When COVID-19 came, we decided to bring all that adventure closer to people. So now people can now drive to our locations and still, do our world-class adventures. And so once we did this, people no longer had to be in a bus with strangers. People could comfortably select dates and times that worked for them. And then they were assured that once they came into the outdoors, already COVID-19 transmission in the outdoors is extremely minimal. The research and the science support that as well. So now you may not be able to eat out in a restaurant, but you could still come out and have fun and post those photos on Instagram on our adventures. And so we really had the opposite happening for our kind of activities.
Wow. It's been an exciting conversation. I mean, anytime with you is a learning opportunity, so many things to learn. And so far, your own classmates and colleagues, how many of them have patronized what you do?
I think so far right now we are inching towards 4 or 5 from my direct classmates.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's a reason for that. What helps businesses grow is something we call vertical integration. The people who have the kind of money we need are ahead of us.
Okay.
Yeah. And so most young people do not really do business with each other laterally because we're all about earning the same, so there isn't much to move in your direction.
That's right.
But so really, this is really why, and it's not just for our business, but it's for most businesses, especially when you consider the fact that our business is usually considered to be high end. When you're with CKB now, I mean, or that you go and upsell the bridge because you're trying to kill yourself, or you go and kayak because this is what we are considered to be. Yeah. And so whilst we are dealing with the bread and butter issues, nobody's going to give you, say, 400 cedis for a day's adventure. Yeah. This is really what it is. But it's not because they don't know about it or they wouldn't have loved to try it if they could. But it's often because of this kinds of situation. But interestingly, our mates in business are the ones, suggesting our activities to their businesses. Then they get their
they
businesses
give you
and HR.
referrals.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, because they can talk to HR and get HR to bring them in there. And since the company pays, it's even better. Yeah.
Okay. Right. It's been exciting talking to you. One of these days, I'm going to have to invite you and then we will talk strictly adventure. Maybe we'll have to locate it to maybe the summer area where a lot of these Western countries are vacationing, beyond their borders and the rest, so that you get to tell us the packages you have, the kind of activities lined up, possibly the dates and the rates involved, so that we see if through that we can create some sort of awareness across, to get some people patronizing it. But I think it's been an exciting moment with you. Thank you very much. And we are grateful. I am personally grateful that when I called, at least you granted me the audience to be able to have this interaction with you. I know for those who joined us or those who may be watching later, they'll be able to pick a leaf or two, especially on some of the views you shared on journalism practice and the communication industry in general. But I am hoping and believing that with this kind of initiative you have taken, maybe one day we'll wake up to see a university program, which is almost close to something like this, through which, the mass interest will be whipped up. I'm sure with that, maybe once you are done with your PhD, you should begin to look at how best you can use your influence to push some of these things, from the very, have you looked at the possibility of it, maybe your outfits introducing some sort of, even if it's a short program, together with some institutions, they do maybe some 2 days in the class, the rest you take them out there for them to experience what you told them. And then that wraps up the program, maybe a whole week, but 2 days in the class, and then the remaining out there for them to get to experience. I'm sure there can be a starting point.
So far, I mean, Ashesi University is a progressive university.
Oh,
and
wow.
we run experiential learning activities for them.
Okay.
Some of the international schools, Alpha Beta, Tema International School Association, these are not the normal schools. These are obviously different, very progressive, highly, progressive institutions.
I call Ashesi University Ghana's Montessori in the tertiary level.
In the university's level, exactly. So but if you have the University of Ghana Business School, for example, do this, then that we're getting to
that's huge.
We all want to get.
My brother, thank you very much. It's been exciting having you.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much.
Sure. All right.
God bless.
Amen. Bye.